time is here at last. The time is here at last. We're moving closer and closer. Hearts racing so fast. We never believed this would happen, but the time is here at last. The time is here at last. I hope you can see me from there, 'cause I can see you. Yes, I can see. Look around at all the halos illuminate the skies above. Lost and found, you never gave up. No matter what, you always looked up. I hope you can see me from there, 'cause I can see you. Yes, I can see you. Save me. it's true. I wanna make it happen, and I'd love to talk it through. But I can see you mean it, holding your breath, watching me. So I'm not gonna kid you. This is your choice, and now you're free.
Welcome, everybody. You are looking live at New Shepard from Launch Site 1 in West Texas. She's preparing for her 15th flight to space. I'm Ariane Cornell here with my co-host, Patrick Zaituni. Good to see you again, Patrick.
Hey, Ariane, and welcome, everyone. We're here in our Kent, Washington headquarters, and today is a very special day. In addition to flying a rocket into space and back, which is exciting in itself, we're actually going to be doing a dress rehearsal for our astronaut experience. So what does that mean exactly? We're going to have Blue Origin employees standing in for actual astronauts, going through all of the astronaut movements we're going to be doing in the future, including loading into our New Shepard crew capsule on the launch pad while it's fully fueled and ready to go.
Exactly, Patrick. Our stand-in astronauts are currently finishing last-minute preparation in our astronaut training center. And we expect them to merge at about T-minus 45 minutes, so coming up in about 12 minutes here. And of course, we're going to follow all the action as it unfolds. Now, to be clear today, there are going to be no humans on board flying to space, but everything leading up to that moment will be rehearsed under actual conditions. But before we get into today's details, we want to put some context around the entire New Shepard program and help define what step-by-step ferociously truly means. And there's nobody better to tell that story than Gary Lai. So Gary has been here at Blue Origin for over 17 years, and we call him the architect of New Shepard. We asked him to articulate how each launch has gotten us to today's moment, with safety, of course, at the heart of everything that we do.
For New Shepard, we've been following an aggressive step-by-step approach from the beginning. Because it is a robotic vehicle, we have the advantage of being able to take it through an entire flight test program to make sure it's safe for astronauts. We think it's very important not only to show that we have a very robust design, but that we can repeat the feat over and over again until we are satisfied that we have enough data to fly people on it. The first time we flew New Shepard, it went to space, and we demonstrated every single aspect of the operation of the capsule for re-entry, parachute deployment, and that mission was 100% successful for the capsule. M2 was about taking what we learned from that mission, rolling in changes, and trying it again.
Engine start, we have thrust. Touchdown.
This time we stuck the landing. But we wanted to do more than just show that it was possible one time, but we needed to show we could do it again. So that was what M3 was. We turned around the vehicle as quickly as possible and we flew it again to show that we could do it again in a relatively short amount of time. For M4, we pushed the envelope. We executed aerodynamic maneuvers on the propulsion module and crew capsule on reentry to really understand what they were capable of doing. The way that we land the propulsion module today, doing it just lighting the engine just seconds before it would impact the ground and doing this controlled landing, we perfected it at that time.
Human safety is fundamental to the design of both of the vehicles, but especially the crew capsule.
The capsule is the most highly redundant and safe spaceflight system we think that has ever been designed or flown. Every detail on that capsule, no matter how small, has been thought through carefully. We also did not compromise on fault tolerance, and that's the idea that you have redundancy, that if a system fails, you have a backup system, and in most cases, you have a backup to the backup system. For instance, the capsule is designed to be safe for astronauts if only one of the three main parachutes opens, and so we wanted to test that in real life on M5. So in M5, we intentionally did not deploy one of the main parachutes. In that situation, the retro rocket actually compensates for the higher descent rate by adjusting the amount of thrust, and it worked perfectly. Now, if the capsule is going down way too fast because it has only one parachute opening, then our third and fourth safety systems engage, which is a crushable section, sort of like a bumper. Then the seats have a scissor mechanism underneath them that has further energy absorption. The capsule has an escape system, which is designed in case there is something wrong detected on the propulsion module to get the astronauts away and get them to safety.
From the moment that we have closed the hatch, we can go escape enabled. And from that moment on, being this full envelope escape, we have very high confidence that we can keep people safe.
We've done a pad escape test where we can show that the capsule can launch and escape if there is an anomaly or an accident on the pad. The M6 mission was about testing that at its most stressing condition. We ignited the solid rocket motor in flight and showed that we could recover the capsule safely. For M7, what we introduced was a new capsule design that included the very large windows, seats, control systems on board that would control the environment in the cabin. That was the very first mission for that combined vehicle stack, and it was successful. M8 was just a repeat of M7 largely, and then the third escape test was to show that we could escape in space. So on M9, the propulsion module boosted the capsule to space, and after separation, the capsule lit off its solid rocket motor and re-entered and landed safely.
We've demonstrated with pad escape and the in-flight escape, transonic escape, that capsule escape system is solid.
Between M9 and M13, we are flying payload missions for customers, giving us even more and more confidence in the capability of the New Shepard system. 13 was a perfect flight, and we're preparing for the M14 mission, which will just be another verification and check. The overall mission of Blue Origin has remained completely the same. We are here to build the road to space.
Wow, that was a truly inspiring video and a lot of great stuff from Gary. You know, anytime he opens his mouth, I just sit up and listen because I know I'm going to get some knowledge dropped on me here.
That man is a well of knowledge, that is for sure.
Yeah, so as we can tell from that video, what Gary's been saying, it perfectly sets the stage and the context for why this astronaut experience rehearsal matters and how it fits in with the broader scope of this New Shepard launch and campaign.
Agreed, Patrick. Gary in that video really helps us understand the how and the why of what we do here at Blue Origin. And today, We're doing a lot. Okay, so let's get into it and discuss the overview of the astronaut experience once we do start flying people. So here we go. First, the astronauts will arrive 3 days before flight. They will be met by our astronaut experience team who will take them out to their accommodations at Launch Site 1, and that's where they will meet crew member 7. Now, you're going to hear us talk a lot about crew member 7 today. They are the astronauts' guide through the entire experience. The next day, the astronauts will begin their training, diving into detailed mission and vehicle overviews, learning the procedures for getting into and out of the capsule, and they'll also be part of a mission simulation where they're going to be strapped into their seats in a replica of the crew capsule, a lot like what you see behind us today. Now, on launch day, they're going to suit up, show some of that, you know, Patrick, that astronaut swagger, and go through final preparations. And last but not least, they're going to caravan out to the tower, climb up the tower, through the hatch, and buckle up. And that's when things get real.
That's right, really real, Ariane, because that's when they're going to be ready to actually take off into space and get that incredible experience. Now, let's talk about today's stand-in experience and today's astronauts who are not exactly going to space, but they're going to be doing everything up to that point, including going all the way into the capsule while the rocket is fueled and testing all of that. And earlier today, as you can see here on the screen, they moved from their astronaut village over to the training center where they're actually at right now and doing their final preparations.
Today is going to be a big day for them, and as we noted, at about T-minus 45 minutes, so that's coming up in about 3 or 4 minutes here, they're going to leave the training center and continue the astronaut load process by proceeding out to the pad. So while we stand by for that, why don't we give our viewers a lay of the land? So our field reporter, Caitlin Dietrich, was at Launch Site 1 recently during some of our previous astronaut rehearsals, and she filmed a video to give you an up-close look of Launch Site 1. Let's check it out.
Hello, everyone. I'm Caitlin Dietrich. I'm here in beautiful West Texas watching the sunrise over Blue Origin's Launch Site 1. This site is where our astronauts are soon going to fly to space, and today I want to take you on a tour of some of the highlights they'll experience before their mission. You know, you just feel like you should kind of be out here on horseback, but then you turn the corner onto our launch site and see the barn with our feather on it, and there's 2 rockets living in there. Before our astronauts go to space, they'll come visit their vehicle in the barn. This is where our astronauts will arrive during their training to greet their vehicle, get acquainted with the capsule, and learn about the booster. This is also where our mission team mates the crew capsule with the booster. Then, the night before launch, the booster rolls out those doors on the way to the launch pad. All right, so right now we're driving the road to space, which is the road the astronauts will take to go to the tower, climb up, and get in the capsule. And when our astronauts arrive here, they'll walk up these stairs, and they're only a few steps away from their trip to space. Once you get to the top of the tower, you see your rocket and your capsule. And this is going to be one of those moments that you remember for the rest of your life. Tell us what you do on launch days for our astronauts.
We go straight into installing the thermal conditioning system in the cabin. Crew member 7 will buckle the astronauts into their seats. At that point in time, we will close the hatch and the bridge will retract a little bit and they'll be ready for flight. And liftoff.
This place is the start of something really special, and you can't help but feel that way when you're down at Launch Site 1.
Very cool. Patrick, we've been down there a couple of times. It is a spectacular place from which to begin and end your journey to space.
That's right.
Now, the anticipation is really building here at Blue Origin. After 15 consecutive successful missions, including our capsule pad escape test, we are well on our way to flying astronauts. And talking about astronauts, we're moments away from seeing our stand-in astronauts begin traveling to the pad. That should happen in about a minute or so. But in the meantime, let's discuss what we're about to see today and what they're going to do. So we've got a site map here for a little bit of context. So on the left side, on the west side of UC Texas Route 54 is our astronaut village. That's where the astronauts are going to stay. It's their base camp. On the right side of the screen, or the east side of Highway 54, is our launch complex, which includes our astronaut training center. So coming up in a couple of seconds here, the astronauts will leave the astronaut training center with crew member 7. They will shuttle just a few miles north to the tower. You can also see it there on your map. And that's where the rocket will be readying for launch. At T-minus 35, once on the launch pad, our astronauts and crew member 7 are going to climb the tower. This operation will take about 2 minutes. It is a relatively tall tower out there. And they're going to be accompanied by a photographer who's there to document the entire astronaut's pre-flight experience. And we also have a couple of tower cameras. So we will be giving you all a couple of different views and perspectives on the operation today. All right, we're at T-minus 45, Patrick. And I understand that we have gone into a brief hold here. So while we have a hold, why don't we check out New Shepard on the pad as the rocket, which, as we mentioned, we're going through this astronaut experience crew rehearsal today. The rocket itself is also going to be going to space, not with any astronauts on board, but we are preparing for a launch. So why don't we check out New Shepard here? Welcome back, everybody. We're at T-minus 45 minutes to go until launch. This will be New Shepard's 15th launch to space and back. We're at T-minus 45 minutes. We are in a brief hold. And again, what we're waiting for at the moment is for the crew, the stand-in astronauts. They are Blue Origin employees today that are going through the entire crew experience rehearsal. So this is all of the actions that are happening up until they get into the capsule. They're going to be doing a couple of comms checks, and then we are going to egress the stand-in astronauts, bring them back down the tower, and then we will be having a launch of New Shepard again, 15th mission for New Shepard. So while we're in a hold, why don't we go back and check out New Shepard as we wait for our stand-in astronauts to leave their astronaut training center. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us for New Shepard's 15th flight to space, as well as a very exciting day for us at Blue Origin. We are doing a crew experience rehearsal. You see here on your screen, the stand-in astronauts have left the astronaut training center, and they are making their way out to the crew tower. Patrick, how exciting is that?
I know.
This is, to be able to overlay astronaut experience and astronaut rehearsals onto a launch, it is a critical step in our march towards actual first human flight, which is extraordinary. I'm getting chills just watching this.
Absolutely. I mean, there's obviously a lot of complexity in a normal rocket launch with all of the sequences that you actually have to go through. And then if you then layer in the complexity of actually loading astronauts safely, making sure they get in okay, get strapped in, and all the while considering safety, there's a lot of complexity there in that delicate ballet.
Absolutely. So here you see the stand-in astronauts. They're in that black vehicle there. They're just driving in front of what you see our mission control facility. And coming on the right side of your screen here, that is the barn that we talk about with that big, beautiful feather on the side of it. The astronauts there stopping to wave to the team at mission control. They're in that vehicle, Patrick, with our crew member 7, a photography team, and today there will be 4 astronauts. You see there we have 2 crew member 7s, one Kevin Sprague, and the one there in the blue suit, that's Sarah Knight. One is always with the team, and the other is Capcom. So Sarah, as you saw there, she's going to be our Capcom for the day. She will be in the ear of our astronauts throughout their entire journey.
Yeah, that's right, Ariane. And there we see the team here. They just sort of circled that bend going past the barn, and now they're on their way over to the launch pad. This is what we call the road to space. It's this beautiful long straight road, about 2 miles, and in the backdrop there you would have New Shepard. I wonder, Ariane, if you were in that car right now, and let's say going up into space and seeing that rocket getting bigger and bigger, how would you be feeling?
I mean, I've said it many times. I wanted to go to space since I was a little girl, and I imagine that our future customers, astronaut customers, will also have had that feeling. And so you're in that car, and it's you and your crewmates and the rocket, and that's it in this big, vast Texas desert, and you are on your way towards fulfilling this childhood dream. I tried to throw some words out there, but really there are no words. I actually think that there's going to be so much adrenaline pumping through it. You're going to be experiencing more than, actively engaging in the moment.
You're absolutely right. And for me, I think I would also have just a bit of a, sereneness and sense of calm as you see this just landscape go by and seeing this rocket get bigger. And you're like, wow, this is happening.
Yeah, this is happening. There they are zipping by. It is about they're away from one of our crew members. They're getting psyched, as they should. Now, this is it's about a 2-mile road from the barn out to the launch pad. Once the vehicle makes it out to the pad, they're actually going to go to the north side of what we call the ring road that goes around the pad, and they're going to stop for a team photo. That should be pretty fun. And as they're doing that, Patrick, maybe we should get into, finish up on the timeline that we were describing earlier of what's going to be happening here. So they've left the astronaut training center. They've driven out to the pad here. They're going to take their photo. After the photo, they're going to continue around to the base of the tower, climb those stairs, the set of stairs at the base of the tower, and they're going to go into that white shelter that you see at the top of your screen at the top of the towers. That is the safety shelter. And they're going to wait for the tower crew to give them the thumbs up to load into the capsule. So at about T-minus 33, with assistance from the tower operations team and crew member 7, they'll load into the capsule, get into their seats, and buckle into their harnesses. So our stand-in astronauts are going to be sitting on a fully fueled rocket today. This is Patrick, this is as real as it can get without igniting the ignition and sending them on a trip to space today. Again, the rocket will be doing that today, just not with the astronauts in it. There they go.
It's a
Looking
cool
good.
picture right
That's a pretty
there.
cool picture right there. I feel like that's one of those photos that in your Zoom meeting background you'd have pretty prominently there. Just, you know, just a little humble brag photo.
For me, I think it'd be the picture of me in the seat, unstrapped, floating around in front of that big window with the Earth in the backdrop. That'd be my Zoom background.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I'll give you that one. That would be a pretty sweet money shot. All right, so they have finished their photo op there on the north side of the pad, and they're going to continue their drive around towards the base of the tower there. Let's watch. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us live for New Shepard's 15th flight to space. We are T-minus 37 minutes and 40 seconds to go until launch of New Shepard. We're in the middle of our astronaut rehearsal. Again, we're taking our stand-in astronauts, 4 Blue Origin employees, through our entire astronaut experience, and they will experience everything today that our astronaut customers will, minus the flight to space. The point today, of course, to weave in the astronaut operations on top of normal launch operations, which is critical to overall safe operations once we get into having customers on board today.
Absolutely.
Now, Patrick, why don't we pick it up? We talked about the timeline. They are just they are ascending the stairs as we called out earlier. What happens next?
Yeah, so once they go up and they get out of that white shelter there that we see, they're going to cross the gantry and actually get into the capsule. 2 of them are going to do that. And once they're actually settled in there, they're going to get strapped in. Crew member 7 is going to help them in. They're actually going to do a communications test with our Capcom or capsule communications. They're going to check to make sure we hear each other okay. And then we're going to do a simulated hatch closing. We're going to close the hatch, not latch it. Then we're going to, after a few moments, we're going to reopen the hatch, and then our astronauts are going to exit the capsule or egress, and then we're going to go back to a normal launch profile, so to speak, and they need to prep New Shepard for launch.
And Patrick, today, so while we have 4 stand-in astronauts going through this rehearsal today, only 2 of them are going to be getting into the capsule. Do you want to explain to us why that is?
Absolutely. So, as you know, we have 6 seats in our New Shepard, the crew capsule, so we can take 6 astronauts up into space. Now, today, we have the esteemed Mannequin Skywalker taking yet again another flight up into space. And the next 3 seats next to him are actually filled with boxes full of postcards from Club for the Future to take up into space and bring on those back. And so, with all those seats, essentially, we only have 2 seats open, so that's why we're only going to have 2 of those astronauts actually go into the capsule.
Very exciting moment here. Now the astronauts have entered, the stand-in astronauts have entered into the safety shelter there. You see Kevin Sprogge, our crew member 7 on the right. We're going to get to know Kevin Sprogge and Sarah Knights, our first Blue Origin crew member 7s, in just a bit here. You might recognize Gary Lai on the left from earlier in our video today.
Absolutely. And Ariane, so these, our 4 stand-ins right now are in what we call our safety shelter. And, this room is a climate-controlled room where astronauts can do their final preparations like you see right now, get their briefing from Kevin. And this also serves as a safety stop in case, there's any issue on the pad. The astronauts and the team can safely stay in this shelter until situation is resolved. Of course, if our stand-ins or astronauts are in the capsule itself, they can quickly egress, make it across the gantry, and get into that shelter, and where they can wait out any issues at all. So, that room is quite multi-purpose there, as you can tell.
Right. Well, let's continue to watch here the operations inside the safety shelter. Looks like they are leaving the shelter.
That's right. So what you're going to see here is about an 8-minute long process of actually loading the 2 astronauts there into the capsule. And at the end of which, like we said, we're going to simulate the hatch closing with the 2 stand-ins inside. Ariane, do you want to tell us about the 2 folks that are actually going to be going in here to this capsule today?
Sure. So in the foreground, you just saw our photographer, Joel Eby, who is preceding them. Got to catch some sweet photos, of course, of our astronauts as they head out there. So here we have Susan Knapp, Gary Lai, Audrey Powers, and in the back there we've got Clay Morey and Kevin Sprague, our crew member 7. So we're the 4 astronauts plus the photographer and our crew member 7 have made their way obviously closer to the rocket. As you mentioned, only 2 of the stand-in astronauts are going to go into the capsule today. We've got, again, Mannequin Skywalker. You can see him.
Right
He's
there.
already locked and loaded, ready for his flight to space. And 3 payload lockers that will be taking postcards from Club for the Future up. But we are soon to see Gary Lai. You heard from Gary a little bit earlier in our broadcast. He's been here over 17 years, and we call him the architect of New Shepard. So it's quite moving for all of us here at Team Blue to watch him ascend the tower and get inside of the capsule that he designed. Audrey, who you just saw step into the capsule there, she is one of the leaders of our legal team and is a big part of all of the operations that we conduct here at Blue. Mm-hmm. But, in particular, Patrick, we talk a lot about the engineering that goes into the design and the manufacturing and the operations, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But there's an important legal component that goes into it, too. In particular, there's a lot of interaction that we've had over years with the FAA. And so our point of contact is Audrey Powers. So to add to her, rock star resume, she's also a pilot, no big deal, and the first female chair of the Commercial Spaceflight Federation. Mm-hmm. So really, really neat. She's had some incredible impact on space legislation and policy in some major ways, for the whole entire commercial space industry. I do want to do a special little shout out to her niece, Genesee. Genesee is a big fan of Blue Origin, one of our Club for the Future members. So, hey, Genesee, good morning. And another shout out to Gary's kids, Anna and Alec. They are all potential future astronauts with us. So hopefully taking the footsteps behind their older family members. So why don't we continue to take a look here for our astronaut experience rehearsal. It is continuing. We have the stand-in astronauts in the capsule. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us today. We're at T-minus 29 minutes to go until launch. A very exciting day for us here at Blue Origin. This is New Shepard's 15th flight to space and our first astronaut experience dress rehearsal combined with a launch. We should note again, no astronauts will be going to space today, but this is really a critical step in our march towards first human flight. Now, our stand-in astronauts, Blue Origin employees Gary Lai and Audrey Powers are in the capsule, and it looks like the simulated hatch closing is about to get underway. Let's keep an eye on our screen for that.
Sounds good. And Ariane, I think right now what they're doing is the actual communications check. So they're talking with mission control and the other astronauts in the safety shelter using their push to talk. They're just confirming all of these checks. And as you pointed out, after we complete those checks, that's when we're going to close the hatch, but not latch it, because we are going to have to take those Gary and Audrey out as much as we want to stay in there.
Yeah. I'm sure they might be trying to hide under the seat, but not today. Not today, Gary and Audrey. Soon, though.
Soon. Mannequin's keeping an eye on them.
Yeah, Mannequin's got a good eye on them, and this is his flight again today. So again, in the capsule, we have Audrey Powers and Gary Lai, as well as our crew member 7, Kevin Sprague. Our other crew member 7 is Sarah Knight. She is on Capcom, so she's on the other end of these communications tests that we're doing with our astronauts today. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us live. We're at T-minus 25 minutes to go until launch. Our crew experience rehearsal is well underway, seems to be going well so far. While we have a moment here, let's talk about the flight profile of the rocket. Once we finish the crew experience rehearsal, we will extract the stand-in astronauts. They will get back in their car, and they will drive back to mission control for New Shepard to enjoy the rest of her day, which includes a flight to space, which will go as such. The rocket will lift off, the propulsion module propelling the crew capsule up towards space. At 75 kilometers, or about 250,000 feet, the two vehicles will separate and continue their ascent to their respective apogees. The booster will, once it's hit its apogee, which is over the Kármán line, over the internationally recognized line of space of 100 kilometers, it will come back down and land on our landing pad just 2 miles north of the launch pad. The capsule, in parallel, will continue its flight up to its own apogee, which we're aiming for about 105 kilometers. If we had astronauts on board, they would get their 3 minutes of weightlessness, gazing out of the beautiful windows. You know, as we said, 6 seats, 6 windows. Over a third of the capsule is windows. So when, you know, Patrick, when we get the opportunity to fly up there, it's going to feel like we are floating in space with all that window.
It's going to be incredible.
It's going to be incredible, absolutely. And after the 3 minutes, buckle back in, and the capsule descends, comes down under 3 big parachutes. And just in the last moments, we have the retro thrust system that fires and creates basically an air cushion for a nice soft landing back into our valley here, back in the desert. So we're at T-minus 24 minutes and 51 seconds to go to launch. We were in a brief hold. I understand we'll be emerging from the hold here shortly, while the team is continuing to do its various checks, communications checks. They have to check all the systems that are in there. Again, this is the first time that we've had stand-in astronauts, people on top of this fully fueled rocket. And again, we will not be flying them to space, but we're doing just about everything but today. We did see Joel Eby, our photographer, go into the capsule to get some last-minute photos of Gary Lai and Audrey Powers. There, our stand-in astronauts.
As we can see, yeah, we did the simulated hatch closing, so we got that check out of the way, and now the hatch is back open, and we've entered that planned hold that should last a couple of minutes here. And this pre-planned hold is part of the rehearsal operations designed to make sure we can get our astronauts out of the capsule. Again, we call that egress, and then headed back to the safety shelter, and then eventually back into their cars and mission control. Of course, we're doing this time because we're taking the astronauts out. On launch day, this hold would not happen because, of course, our astronauts would be going to space, right?
That is right. So we just saw Gary and Audrey leave the capsule there. Our crew on the tower is just going to do some last checks before they close the hatch for real.
Make sure nobody's stowing away.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure there are no stowaways. There's Audrey and Gary,
That's
and our
Joel right
photographer.
there.
Re-entering the safety shelter there, where they met up with the other 2 stand-in astronauts, Clay Morey and Susan Knapp. Obviously, having a good time. Getting so close to flying people here at Blue Origin. Again, this is a very, very important step on our march to first human flight. You can almost taste it, Patrick.
Sounds like they're recapping their great experience there and what they got to do in the capsule and all those tests. Man, it must have been so exciting.
And again, can you imagine Gary Lai, the gentleman in the bottom right corner of your screen? He's been at Blue Origin since the very beginning. He knows this system inside and out, and that's why it's really touching for him to participate in this activity, right? He's been really committed through this entire program to getting this vehicle up, flying, landing, and soon taking people to space and back. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us live for New Shepard's 15th mission to space. We are at T-minus 24 minutes and 51 seconds. We are in a brief hold here, but so far we have had what appears to be a successful astronaut rehearsal. Let's stand by. Again, thank you everybody for joining us live for New Shepard's 15th mission to space. We have cleared the hold and the countdown clock is resuming. We're at T-minus 24 minutes and 30 seconds to go until launch. Patrick, looks like they are closing the hatch for real.
That's right. They're locking Anakin Skywalker in for his flight, and looks like that capsule is ready to launch today.
Absolutely. Everything seems to be going nominally. You do see our crew member 7 on the left. That is Kevin Sprague, as well as our crew tower. Excuse me, our tower crew, of course. They are, again, closing the hatch. Soon, Kevin will rejoin the astronauts in the safety shelter, and they are going to make their way down the stairs and back to mission control so they can watch the launch along with the rest of us. Again, thank you everybody for joining us live for New Shepard's 15th flight to space. We have so far had a successful astronaut experience rehearsal. We just saw the tower crew closing the hatch for real. We had earlier our astronauts in there, stand-in astronauts, did some tests, and now we are continuing our countdown to the launch itself. Now, Patrick, we've talked a lot about crew member 7 and how important they are to our astronauts and their full experience, right? We saw Kevin Sprague on the tower with our team. We had Sarah Knights, who was on Capcom. We saw them waving to our astronauts at the last moment there as they headed out towards the rocket. But why don't we take a little closer look at their roles and specifically meet Kevin and Sarah? Let's check it out.
The entire vision of Blue Origin is we want to democratize space.
T-minus 10.
You don't need to be a NASA astronaut. You don't need to be a trained engineer.
5,
we want artists
4,
and poets and
3,
teachers and scientists to be able to go to space.
1. New Shepard has cleared the tower.
Crew member 7 is a position unique to Blue. 2 assigned to each launch. There are 6 people that can fly in our crew capsule. The 7th person is the crew member 7.
This is for real. This is it.
The other crew member 7 is called Capsule Communicator, and they represent all of mission control and launch operations to the astronauts.
It took me a long road to get here. I spent over 20 years as a fighter pilot at the United States Navy, but since I've been 8 years old, I wanted to be in space. Coming here to Blue Origin is the realization of a childhood dream of mine.
My background is in physics and astronomy. I went into STEM education. I was a teacher for many years. And when the position opened up at Blue, I knew that was me. The fact that I'm crew member 7 and the visible point of our entire team, it's such an honor.
You're expected to start hearing the noise. Crew member 7 is part teacher, part trainer, and part guide.
They're embedded with the astronauts. They're truly a member of the crew.
They're going to live with you at the astronaut village. They're going to conduct all of your astronaut training.
Spaceflight is complicated, but our astronauts that fly with us will not need to have a complicated view of what's happening. The rocket is autonomous, and all of the safety systems are hardwired into the core.
On launch day, crew member 7 is actually going to walk you up the tower, put you in your seat in the capsule, close the hatch. Capsule Capcom.
The Capcom will then take over as the astronauts take their journey to space. And then as soon as they land, crew member 7 will be there to help open the hatch and whisk them away to the celebrations. Our astronauts are one part of a very historic journey.
We're trying to build the infrastructure to get millions of people living and working in space.
So the people who come here will truly be helping us take that first step.
Clearly, Patrick, these astronauts are in very capable hands with Kevin and Sarah. Not just capable, but they are experienced and extraordinarily passionate about space and everything that we do at Blue Origin.
Absolutely.
Now, this is, I don't know about you, but this is quite surreal to watch. Again, we are getting very close to sending people up to space and back. And I hope that there are students around the world that get to see events like this and are inspired to pursue careers in space. Patrick, I know you and I, it was more shuttle era, watching the shuttle go up, and I hope that we're a key part of inspiring the next generation. And everybody at Blue is, so much so that we founded Club for the Future. This is our nonprofit that has been hard at work since 2019. And as you know, we launch postcards from around the globe in New Shepard, including today. And it's all about inspiring youth and opening up access to space for everybody. Now, the club has worked with some of the most recognized names in STEM education, including Microsoft Education and the Challenger Center. So why don't we take a closer look at these partnerships and all things Club for the Future.
At Club for the Future, we get to inspire youth to really give them that connection and love for space. Club for the Future has a superpower where we get to literally tap into rocket scientists, aerospace architects, and people who are not only just dreaming the future, but they're out there building it. So our very first mission is send a postcard to space. All 7 continents and well over 100 countries have participated. And so that little moment where they realize this postcard has taken that journey that they're going to have the opportunity to take also one day, it clicks, and they're hooked. Club's been fortunate over this past year to have some really amazing partnerships. One is Project Janos.
Students need to have their curiosity sparked so they can fall in love with human spaceflight and why it's not in the future, it's today. Let's look at the past, the present, and the future. So for the past, it's the Apollo legends. For the present, we're looking at Artemis. And then for the future, the vision that Blue has set for human spaceflight. And that's why Club for the Future and Project Janos has real potential to have a positive impact on the world.
Another one is Microsoft Education Day of Data.
We are preparing these students for these future careers, fundamental skills like creative thinking, problem solving, computational thinking, and data literacy. It's been a fantastic partnership. Who doesn't want to be part of the rocket launch?
Club for the Future partnered with STEM to Hub. Together, we challenged the entire state of Florida to dream big.
It was like giving them the gift of the future.
Club for the Future is proud to be supporting Challenger Center. They've not only implementing the Postcard to Space program, but Club for the Future most recently has been helping build a virtual mission called Destination Moon, where they put kids right in the seat of mission control, taking the New Glenn to the moon.
The teachers have told us that they're loving it, the students are loving it. They're going to be the ones exploring Mars and Moon. They're going to be the ones launching New Glenn.
Thanks for being members of the Club for the Future.
I can just think of one word: hope. I see this entire generation that's going to be part of something far, far bigger than I am.
Great. No, it was so cool to see all that awesome work that the club is doing. Very inspiring. And there, what we just see on our screen, our stand-in astronauts have descended the tower, gotten in the vehicle, and they're heading back to mission control. That's where they're going to be watching the actual launch and landing from, and then they're going to go out to the landing site after that to continue the essentially the back-end part of the astronaut rehearsal.
Right.
So as we've been talking about, Club for the Future and all things about the club, I do want to highlight that there's a club member that we know and love that has been a great part of helping their local community, especially as part of that recent unfortunate Texas winter storm. We caught up with him to hear about how he's been helping his community, as well to talk a little bit about what it's like being an ambassador for Club for the Future. So let's go hear it from Beckett Potter's own words.
Let's check it out.
I know I was 4 years old, and I asked my dad to look at the website and sign up for your newsletter. And I've been watching your videos, and I've seen every single launch that I've known about. Really love the Club for the Future, and your program to send public messages to space is brilliant. You're really making space so accessible to kids. And I drew a New Shepard on my postcard here. Yes, so we're working with the Lukumi Foundation, and they're all about making a difference for their own lives and help others using good deeds. And we invite any kids to join worldwide. So my idea with Blue Origin and Lukumi is to collaborate with Club for the Future to make the postcards to send in space. And we are going to put positive and inspirational messages on the cards. And instead of having them returned back to yourself, we're going to send them to someone else. It'll be great. In fact, even out of this world. Now, although I'd just like to say, if you ever need a junior correspondent for New Shepard, I'm your kid. Go Team Blue. We're on a dance for Rocher.
Oh my God, what an adorable and inspiring kid.
Beckett, you should just take my seat, although I'm sure the Ellen Show has already called him. We've lost our moment. All right, well, so as we're talking about Club for the Future, I do want to talk about another initiative from the club, which involves our buddy Mannequin Skywalker, who's on board today. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that, Patrick?
Absolutely. I love talking about Mannequin the Next Adventure. So Blue Origin is going to be donating Mannequin Skywalker to the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, which is home, of course, to one of our key partners, Space Camp. So we're also going to be donating one of the New Shepard seats. And so with Mannequin and the seat, I think we can tell a great story about sort of that path to flight and really tell students how, Mannequin essentially helped the New Shepard program and human spaceflight. So I think that could be a great way to, actually see it there.
Absolutely agree.
And if we go to a little bit more detail sort of on that story, one of the cool things about these mannequins is that in many ways they're similar to the kind used by first responders in rescue training. So there we see Mannequin, actually in New Shepard capsule, in space. Gosh, I'm sure he wants to be floating around up there. And so
he's thinking in the zen of space,
there
Patrick.
You go.
That's
Exactly.
what he's doing.
You and I would not be zen up
there.
But these mannequins mimic the weight, form, and center of gravity and the range of motion of the human body. So it allows us to actually test the weight and CG and balance in the capsule, just like we would be if we were flying real people. And so that mannequin that's going to be flying today is actually the same one that flew on the last mission with those Space Camp astronaut wings pinged to the flight suits. It's going to be really cool to see all of that kind of make its way back home.
Very cool indeed. I can't wait to see Mannequin at the Space and Rocket Center in Alabama soon. Again, as you've mentioned, they've been wonderful partners with our Club for the Future. Okay, we're at T-minus 10 minutes and 45 seconds to go until New Shepard's 15th launch to space, although I do notice here that we have gone into a brief hold. So why don't we check out New Shepard on the pad as she gets ready for her flight. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us live for New Shepard's 15th launch to space. We're at T-minus 45 seconds to go until launch. Another countdown to another what should be exciting launch. We are in a hold at the moment, but while we've got a little bit of time left, we did want to bring you up to speed on some progress with our New Glenn vehicle development down in Florida. New Glenn, of course, is our orbital rocket, the successor to New Shepard, our suborbital rocket. We're investing in building a state-of-the-art facility down in the Cape. It is beautiful. You were just down there last week, right? And we're testing flight operations with a giant Stage 1 simulator, producing flight hardware and growing the integration and test facilities down there on our campus. Now, why don't we check out the recent progress for our New Glenn rocket factory at Cape Canaveral with, once again, Caitlin Dietrich.
Hi, everyone. I'm Caitlin Dietrich reporting here from Florida Space Coast in front of New Glenn's rocket factory and growing campus. Let's go. Scott, thank you for having us today. Tell us a little bit about the New Glenn rocket factory.
The campus here in Florida is about 1 million square feet. We currently have over 550 people on site, and we've been growing significantly. We've just entered the high bay, the centerpiece of the factory. Raw stock aluminum comes in one end of the factory to our south, and a rocket moves out to the north.
Take a look at this thing. It's so cool to see New Glenn's first stage like this, just mocked up.
With 180 feet, we're going to be towing something that's close to a football field in length, and it's also 23 foot in diameter, which is larger than anything flying today.
You just showed us outside some of the flight-like parts of the first stage. And this is where we're fabricating them right next door, right?
That's right. This is one of our busiest shops right now. And the team can work on both the forward face, and another part of the team can be behind on the back face. Then they'll go out and be assembled to form that forward and aft module of the New Glenn first stage. You know, these mills that we make these parts on, we're doing things on a scale that has not been done before.
It looks like we have a lot of hardware here on the floor.
Yeah, I love this part of the factory. I mean, we're building domes, we're building barrels, and now we're ready to move into the flight hardware production stage.
We're inside the dome.
So imagine we're at the top of the Stage 2 tank. Below us is a full first stage and second stage New Glenn rocket, over 200 feet. We're now entering our composites hub. This is where our payload fairing, one of our other big elements of New Glenn, is made. This 7-meter payload fairing offers twice the volume of anything flying today. So when you're a payload customer, when you see this, you think, I can put a huge satellite in there, or I can put a whole bunch of small to medium satellites in there and really take advantage of the capability that New Glenn brings to the mix.
very exciting, the operations that it's been fun to watch it kind of mushroom out of the swampy area down there in Florida, just to see this entire campus that we have built. Again, we are the first organization that is going to be building the rocket and flying it out of Florida. So that should be coming up in a couple of years here. That's going to be very exciting. Now, as part of that orbital launch site and general facility campus that we're building there, we have something called the TCAT, or the Tank Cleaning and Testing Facility. We use this facility to pressure test and clean New Glenn's stages before flight. And this massive building that we're about to show you is being used for the fully reusable first stage, which stands 180 feet tall. To give you some context, that's about 3 times the size of New Shepard just in the first stage. So why don't we take a look at this facility?
We're standing in front of the tank cleaning and testing facility for New Glenn on the Rocket Factory campus. About 230 feet tall. We're going to head into the building and get to know this facility and all the capabilities it gives us. So this door right here opens, and essentially the first stage of New Glenn will come in, and this large crane above our head will lift the vehicle up into this fixture right here. This is where the rocket will be when we do the pressure testing. Once the rocket is vertical on this fixture, we use tie downs right here to secure the vehicle. So you can see here we're only on the 3rd floor, and I feel like I've been in this elevator for about 10 years. So we just got into the TCAP at about the same level as the top of New Glenn's first stage. And I just took a quick peek over this railing, and I gotta tell you, this is going to be a massive rocket. So we're climbing just the rest of the stairs to the top of the tower. I feel like I'm standing on New Glenn's first stage. Woohoo! And one thing that's so evident when you're looking down on almost this New Glenn city and our launch site in the port, we really have something unique here. There's no other facility on the Cape where you build the rocket, you fly it, you bring it back, and you fly it again.
Super exciting, super exciting. And, you know, we've talked about it a lot on previous webcasts, but I think it's worth bringing up again. There's been so much value already out of this New Shepard program. Well, we haven't flown people yet, although as today is a testament to, we are very close to flying people to space. But taking the lessons from the design of New Shepard, the operations of New Shepard, the human spaceflight operations of New Shepard, as well as the refurbishment of the vehicles themselves, and rolling them into New Glenn has been, you know, it's almost like it catapults you. It's a, you know, it's a trampoline to the next level, which is why we've already started New Glenn.
Absolutely, Ariane. I mean, essentially all of the learnings that we've had from this great vehicle have already been applied. You see it sort of in the design, everything from how we lay out the stages, the tank designs, everything from how we manufacture the tanks with friction stir welding. You know, all of these things we've learned on New Shepard, and now we're applying on New Glenn. But, you know, to your point, it's at a, you know, 3 to 5x scale, right? Which is kind of, you know, has its own challenges.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the parallels between the first stage of New Glenn and the booster on New Shepard? Yeah, no, it's a great analogy there. So you actually see a lot of the similar design there, which is really interesting. So we have, you know, the same, essentially the same aerodynamic surfaces there, right? So with the strakes and the fins, we have them on New Shepard on that propulsion module. Same thing on the you know, GS1 on the first stage of New Glenn. They just happen to be much larger. I mean, you and I can probably carry the fin of a New Shepard, whereas the one on the first stage of New Glenn is actually the size of you know, the wing of an F-16. And to be clear, you know, we call it a fin. We call it, actually internally, we call it a strake. It effectively acts like a wing. Yeah. Right? Because at 180 feet long, it's effectively, it's kind of like an airplane, right? And we want to give it, we want to have lift on the vehicle to be able to fly it back. and get it back onto our landing ship that will be underway when it comes into land.
Absolutely. So those fins and strakes allow us to get a lot of stability, both essentially directionally, rotationally, and it gives us a lot of the ability to go downrange to land. So a New Shepard allows us to kind of come back and precision land on the pad. Right. With New Glenn, we're going to be landing downrange on a moving ship. So by having all of these aerodynamic structures and having all of that design heritage on how to design them, how to use them in our flight control systems, it allows us to land with a lot of precision downrange without having to use a lot of propulsive maneuvers to essentially, use up all that fuel to kind of land. So lots of great learning from there. A lot of our learning around how we actually land. I mean, Gary sort of spoke to it, right? Our ability to kind of throttle down, right, hover, and kind of land and kind of bring it down nice and gentle there is extremely important. We want to be able to land precisely, and all that throttle ability and guidance around landing all developed on New Shepard, so we don't have to learn it again on New Glenn on something much bigger and much more hefty.
Hefty. I don't know if the rocket would like you calling it hefty.
That's right.
Okay, well, we are at T-minus 10 minutes and 45 seconds to go until New Shepard's 15th launch to space and back. As we've mentioned before, hopefully you caught it as well, we had a successful astronaut experience rehearsal test for the pre-flight operations. Following the flight, those same stand-in astronauts will head out to the capsule once it comes back down, so we can practice some of those post-flight operations as well. But in the meantime, we are in a brief hold. We just want to make sure that our teams are getting aligned and we're all set for New Shepard's flight to space. So why don't we check out New Shepard while she's on the pad getting ready for her flight to space today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for New Shepard's 15th flight to space. We are T-minus 10 minutes and 45 seconds to go until launch here. Our team is just getting aligned on some last-minute issues. But while we've got a little bit of time here, I wanted to bring you all up to speed on some recent progress that we've made on the BE4 engine. We were just talking about New Glenn. You called it hefty. Maybe it's big boned. Again, you know, don't offend the rocket. You're going to want it to work.
It's taken a lot of payload into space. That rocket is doing a great job there.
Absolutely. It's a robust rocket. Now, we have been working on the BE4 engines that are going to propel that rocket. There are going to be 7 BE4 engines, Blue Engine 4s, and we've been successfully hot firing those engines as part of a regimented test program, and we've seen some long duration, full power burns on a regular basis from that engine. To date, we've accumulated over 11,000 seconds of test time. In addition, recently we delivered the first Pathfinder engines to our customer United Launch Alliance for their Vulcan Centaur rocket, which should be flying later this year. And I, for one, cannot wait to watch that rocket and those engines blast off from the Space Coast.
Absolutely.
Mock diamonds are certainly a thing of beauty, aren't they?
Yeah, they
Why don't
are.
we check out some of this footage from a recent BE4 test? There you go, Patrick. You can see the BE4 engine testing. We actually have 2 test cells down there that are both up and firing, which is great because you can test on one engine, get your learnings, you know, adjust the hardware, and in parallel, you can be testing on the next test cell so you don't have a lot of downtime. So this engine here, this is a 550,000 pound of thrust engine. So that's 5 times the power of the BE3 engine, the Blue Engine 3, which is powering New Shepard today. And there will be 7 of those. That means 3.85 million pounds of thrust on liftoff when New Glenn blasts off from the Space Coast in a couple of years here. And again, as mentioned, we've had a lot of successful test firings on it, which is great. This is the first of this sort of liquefied natural gas, LNG, and liquid oxygen engine. Think of LNG like a commercial form of methane for those of you at home that are less familiar with rocket propellants. And so far, so good. And that LNG, actually, we should talk about that for a second. We've picked it for a couple of reasons. For one thing, when you have a reusable rocket, you need reusable rocket engines, which means you need to be able to bring the engines home and refurbish them quickly. And when you use that sort of clean propellant, you can get in there. There's not that kind of nasty coking and other sort of nasty things that come with other types of propellant. It's green.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing as well. And the other thing about LNG, for you rocket nerds at home, you probably know this too, is that it allows us to autogenously pressurize the engine. What does that mean? It means that we can use that LNG to pressurize the lines in the rocket engine as opposed to bringing in what we use on other engines or what others use on other engines, which is helium, which is good, it works, but the problem is it's quite expensive and sometimes can be in a kind of tricky supply. So.
Absolutely, and the great thing about LNG is that it's extremely cheap. It's the same very similar to the gas you use at home. So very easy to get in and use for this. It keeps the costs low. The other great thing about it is because it's actually much denser than hydrogen, you can make that first stage actually quite nice and compact there. You can pack a lot of propellant into a small volume and be able to get a lot of payload up there into space.
Yeah, so we're very proud of this rocket engine that we've developed so far, and have enjoyed working with our partners at United Launch Alliance, who again will be using that rocket engine. They'll be using 2 of them on their Vulcan Centaur, so that should be really fun to watch. So with that, we're at T-minus 10 minutes and 45 seconds to go until New Shepard's launch here this morning. We are in a hold. Our teams are working to make sure that New Shepard can launch today. Also want to make sure that the weather is within bounds. You see it is a bit hazy down there in Texas. We also, of course, as always, watch the winds aloft. We've mentioned this before. You can't really tell down there because of the limited brush, but it can be quite windy, and so it's imperative that our team make sure that everybody, the teams are aligned, but also the weather is within bounds. So why don't we check out New Shepard here? Thank you again, everybody, for joining us live while we wait here for New Shepard's 15th flight to space. We are in a hold here, wanting to make sure that our teams get aligned. Again, I'm Ariane Cornell, here with my co-host, Patrick Zaituni. Now, while we've got a little bit of time, why don't we talk about another one of our programs that we have going on at Blue, our human landing system, our Blue Moon program. And it's part of NASA's Human Landing System program. And we have, we've based our activities for HLS, as we call it, down in Huntsville, Alabama, at our factory down there. And we've actually put a full-scale pathfinder of our descent element lander in preparation of our demonstration mission to the lunar surface. This mission is going to happen a year before landing crew on the moon, which, by the way, I love saying those words. And by proving out our technology and pre-positioning equipment down there on the lunar surface, it's going to start America's sustainable return to the moon, and this time to stay. Let's check out this video.
One of the things that our team is doing is a demonstration flight of our descent element 1 year before we actually send crew, humans, down to the surface. And that provides an enormous amount of risk reduction. We get to practice. In Huntsville, we put together a full-scale pathfinder of the DE demo lander. We can test out, prove out the BE-7 engine, all the major subsystems, the whole propulsion system, the fluid system, the electrical power system, the fuel cells, avionics, the sensors, all of that. We can send that lander and land it autonomously on the surface before the crew goes there. We can deliver all kinds of payloads. We can deliver a metric ton of stuff. We can pre-position material, and it can be whatever you want it to be. We can begin to build up Artemis Space Camp. We're looking at several different ways of offloading payloads from the deck. The obvious thing is a crane. And we've actually got a crane provided for us by Langley Research Center at NASA. We're also looking at a davit system that's being developed by Honeybee Robotics. We're not standing still with the national team. We built this full-scale pathfinder of the DE demo mission in Huntsville to enable long-term sustainability, getting America back to the moon, this time to stay.
It's so cool to watch that video. I mean, Patrick, we talk about this a lot. Step by step, ferociously, gradatum ferociter. That's our motto here at Blue. New Shepard leads into New Glenn. And from once then we're up in orbit, where do we go from there? Like, hey, why don't we go to the moon, right? It's all part of this longer roadmap that we have here at Blue Origin. But we're not going to do this mission alone, are we? Why don't you talk to us about this? Patrick has been part of this program, the lunar program, from the very beginning.
Yeah, it's been incredible and so exciting to see it sort of go from, where it was, nascent 2-3 years ago and sort of where we are right now. It's just, the team has done such an incredible job. And so what you were hearing earlier is, Steve Squires, our chief scientist, talking about all the great things we're going to do, with the descent element and the science and all the incredible stuff we can do on the surface by landing these large payloads. That's incredible. And to me, what's even more incredible is when we get to work with Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and Draper. It's just a phenomenal team. And
they've got a little bit of experience in this.
Exactly.
Yeah, they've got a couple of years.
They've done this a few times, perhaps, and landed on planets, guided, Apollo, small things, and they've just done an incredible job. They brought their A-team on this, and it's incredible to see just the heritage there, the incredible design that's in the ascent element that's actually going to be keeping the astronauts alive, taking them down to the surface and bringing them back up. The transfer element, which actually does a lot of the heavy lifting of the Delta V and gets the whole stack down into the right orbit and gets them down onto the surface, and of course the lander itself, which is bringing that down to the surface and landing them safely, all guided by the Draper algorithms, proven since Apollo and able to bring this down safely with people on board, which of course always adds even more complexity. We can't wait to actually go land this.
Exactly. And again, you just mentioned the not just the complexity of the system, but then you just mentioned we're taking people to the moon.
Yeah.
Much like today, this is actually what we've done today is a step that contributes towards that, right? With New Shepard, we talked about, obviously, we're launching and landing this rocket. We've done it several times previously. We've layered on today the astronaut experience operations and rehearsal that we conducted earlier. And eventually, we're going to be doing that when we go to the moon. But that's not the only parallel between some of the operations that we're doing today and what we're going to do on the moon.
Yeah,
that descent element looks a lot, that landing looks a lot like a landing we know.
Exactly. I mean, if you can sort of shrink a New Shepard a little bit, you can sort of imagine it's so close to a decent element. I mean, there's so many parallels there. And there is, hydrogen and oxygen, right? So the same propellants that we're using here.
That's on our BE-7 engine,
in the
correct?
BE-7 engine, right? Which again builds on a lot of the heritage of the BE-3PM, but it's about a 10x smaller thrust. So it's a little bit of a smaller engine, but even higher performing. Again, very, very compact, very excellent engine there, very efficient, high ISP. But again, builds on a lot of the same learnings from the BE-3 engine on New Shepard. And of course, our landing sequence with all of the landing sensors. And the same thing, you're coming in from about 100 kilometers and autonomously landing in, essentially also pretty rugged desert there. And so there's so much parallels there.
And actually, on that note, we have tested some of that lunar landing technology on New Shepard on previous flights, correct?
Exactly. So working with NASA and a lot of their sensors, we were able to get terrain relative navigation sensors, LiDAR sensors for hazard avoidance, all of these great sensors we actually are planning to use on various parts of the landing itself. We get to test them right here in very similar environments of actually coming down and helping us, figure out what works, what doesn't work, and how to, loop it into the guidance system. It's great to be able to do it here. And actually, by the way, get the sensors back, because as soon as it lands, you can just unbolt them, tweak them a little bit, put them back on, try it again next time.
And that really, New Shepard has been a test bed for many of our payload customers, but it's also nice to use it for our own technology. And again, between the New Shepard astronaut, human spaceflight tourism program that we'll be having coming up, plus our payload customers that have already flown on board in several of our previous missions, the lunar program that has a lot of the technologies that are being transferred into the lunar program, also New Glenn, et cetera. Yep. When you start to put those pieces together, you understand just the value of this rocket that you see on your screen right now. Absolutely has been critical and valuable not only to Blue Origin, but for many other programs out there.
That's right.
Okay, well, Patrick, we are at T-minus 10 minutes and 45 seconds to go. We continue to be in a hold here. Why don't we check out New Shepard as she continues to get ready for her flight to space. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us live for New Shepard's 15th flight to space. There is New Shepard on the pad, ready to rock and roll here. We continue to be in a hold while our teams are getting aligned. But while we've got a little bit of time, we talked quite a bit about the booster earlier. Why don't we talk about the crew capsule? We saw earlier today the crew rehearsal. They rehearsed all of those pre-flight operations, and we had two of our stand-in astronauts go inside of the capsule, do some communications checks with Capcom, et cetera, tested out some of the systems in there. But why don't we let you guys inside the capsule? Let's check out some of the features. So the capsule, like the one behind us here, has 6 windows, 6 seats. As we mentioned earlier, over a third of the capsule is windows. So as we said before, when you're up there floating in space, there's just so much window, it's going to feel like you are out there in space. The seats that you see there, those are in-house designed and tested. They're based off of a helicopter seat, right? Because helicopter seats, we want the ability through that scissor mechanism that you see there, and also that Gary brought up earlier, to take out any last-minute energy if necessary. You see there in the middle, that's our escape motor as part of our safety system to be used if anything wrong is detected with the booster. You also see the white padding on the walls. That's to absorb extra noise, so you get as clean and beautiful and get to experience as much of the silence of space as possible. So this capsule, when we're flying people shortly, I mean, it's as beautiful on the inside as what you're going to see on the outside. But I should note that when we designed the interior of the capsule, we did so to celebrate, if you will, the engineering that went into there. So you see there's not too many bells and whistles on it. It's really quite simple, so that the astronauts, when they're up in space, they can experience space, because that's what it's all about, right? All right, so we're at T-minus 10 minutes and 45 seconds to go. We've introduced you to the capsule. New Shepard is on the pad, continuing to get ready for her launch today. So why don't we check her out? Thank you again, everybody, for joining us for New Shepard's 15th flight to space. We're at T-minus 10 minutes and 45 seconds to go. We continue to be in a hold here. While we're just going to continue to watch New Shepard as she gets ready for flight today. We're just aligning our teams and making sure that weather is in bounds.
This is the flight director on Channel 1 and UHF voice for the go pole for terminal count and launch. Capsule.
Go.
Booster.
Go.
Ground.
Go.
Safety.
Rangers green. Go.
Engineering.
Go.
Capcom. This is the flight director. New Shepard is go for launch. Booster, commence the terminal count.
We'll go flight, and we still have step 104.
All right, everybody, we are go for launch. As we heard, we are at T-minus 10 minutes to go. The countdown clock has resumed. Phew. Let's do it, Patrick.
I know.
That was, you know, we are always looking forward to a launch, and certainly after today, you know, it's just so important that we make sure that we walk through all the checklists, make sure that everything is right, within bounds, and if we need to take a couple more minutes, you know, even 40 of them, that's quite all right with us.
That's right. You don't want to have go fever. You want to do this right and by the book.
Exactly.
I do want to say, I mean, can you imagine if you were actually sitting in a capsule right now, you would have heard this go, no-go poll in your headset. And I think, at least for me, this is where it would have just completely broken out in goosebumps, just knowing that the launch
I am right now.
It would be so exciting.
All right, and now all eyes are on New Shepard. We're into our last-minute checks. They are underway as New Shepard comes alive for flight. We have just a few minutes to go before final checks, so why don't we take a moment and walk through the booster and some of its key features. We did a little bit earlier in context of similarities and parallels to New Glenn, but let's focus on New Shepard. She really is the workhorse of the journey to space. As we mentioned before, New Shepard is powered by the BE-3 engine that's essentially fueled by water, liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen. It propels the rocket to space and restarts for a controlled pinpoint landing on the pad. It's also uniquely throttleable, and that means it's able to slow the booster down to just about 8 kilometers per hour or 5 miles per hour for landing. And you can see at the top of the booster there's the ring fin, and the ring fin houses the drag brakes as well as the wedge fins. The wedge fins for stability, drag brakes to really cut down the speed. You'll see those will cut down the speed in about, that will cut the booster speed in about half. The drag brakes are critical, right? We talk about the balance between the engine and the booster's role in slowing down the rocket, but really it's just some simple aerodynamics from the drag brakes. The aft fins, as you can see towards the bottom of the booster, stabilize the vehicle during ascent, but also steer it back to the landing pad on descent. And they're actually strong enough to guide the rocket through airspeeds of up to Mach 4. And you think, we talked about earlier about the winds aloft. Those are critical, those fins, in making sure that we get our rocket precisely back to the pad. Lastly, we have the landing gear. So all rockets take off, but
One
not
hopes.
all rockets land.
Yeah.
And as a fully reusable rocket, the New Shepard booster uses landing gear that deploys just in the last seconds for touchdown.
That's right. I mean, this is an incredible machine. Kudos to Gary and the team that have spent, all this time designing it and getting it just right. And like we said, this booster design and all of the components inform so much of what we do here. We talked about the similarity between this and the first stage of New Glenn, of course, and the similarities there with the aerodynamics and the design. It's the same propellant combination and a similarly derived engine for the upper stage of New Glenn, so obviously lots of design heritage there. And we talked about, of course, all the great learnings that we've applied to our descent element as part of the lunar lander. So truly, you can almost think of New Shepard as a sort of that first path of the roadmap, and then it just branches out to all these other things that we've done.
Exactly. And we should also mention the reusability element of it, which is critical, right? With our vision of millions of people living and working in space, we need the ability to turn the rocket around quickly, reuse it again, bring down the cost of access to space. All right, you're looking at a live shot of New Shepard on the pad. We are T-minus 6 minutes to go until flight. Why don't we take a look at her? Thank you again for joining us for New Shepard's 15th flight to space. You are looking at a live shot of New Shepard. She's just about to begin her final preparations for her 15th flight to space. We are at T-minus 3 minutes and 10 seconds to go until launch. So for those of you that are just joining us now, earlier in our show, we showed our astronaut experience crew rehearsal. Very exciting. That all seems to have gone perfectly well. And now we're ready for New Shepard's flight itself. So at T-minus 2 minutes, the rocket is going to go into autonomous mode. We throw the show over to her, and the rocket is in charge of itself from liftoff, its entire flight to space, and its landing back, the rocket itself on the landing pad just 2 miles north of the launch pad. In just a moment here, we are going to see the engine gimbal check. as well as what we call the built-in test, the bit checks. We want to make sure that we can move the aerodynamic surfaces freely so that they, just like an airline pilot does before his or her flight, to make sure they've got free range of motion. We also, at the top of the tower, of course, have the gantry that will also retract.
That's right. And Ariane, right there on the gantry, you see these big sun shields there. You know, one of the, if you have 6 very large windows, like you said, and 60% of the capsule is actually windows by volume. Ah, there you go.
There it goes, the retraction.
Your traction right there. So we actually need those shades there just to keep the sun out of the capsule. We want to make the astronaut experience as comfortable as possible. We want to keep them in a nice, cool temperature. As I'm sure we don't want it to turn into a greenhouse with all of this big, beautiful windows. So what our team did is actually put these shades in. It makes it a great experience. And then, now if you or I were in there, we'd be looking out and just...
Ready for launch.
Yes.
Ready for launch. A simple but beautiful solution. All right, there go the aft fin checks. There are 4 of those fins at the base of the rocket. Keep an eye out here. You see the nozzle peeking out of the base of the rocket there. There goes the gimbal check. The engine gimbal, of course, is critical, but in particular as it's coming into land. And Patrick, that takes us to launch. We're at T-minus 30 seconds. Why don't we hand it over to Mission Control for New Shepard's 15th flight to space? It's going to be worth the wait, man. Godspeed, New Shepard.
Guidance internal. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Command engine start. 2, 1.
And we have liftoff. Go, New Shepard, go. Beautiful liftoff from our launch site 1 in West Texas. You can follow along as she gains speed in the bottom left corner of your screen. There's the speedometer, altimeter in the middle there. First milestone on her trip to space, max Q. That's when the dynamic pressure on the vehicle is at its maximum, the toughest point in flight for the vehicle. And max Q is confirmed. All right, right about this time in your flight, on ascent, you're going to max at about 3 Gs. We've noted it before. The max Gs that you pull as an astronaut on New Shepard actually is on descent. So here on ascent, it's about 3 Gs, and it comes on gradually as you go faster and get higher up there. Until, of course, main engine cutoff and separation, and that is when you get to feel those beautiful 0 Gs. We're waiting for that here. Next stops, MECO and separation. Coming up here on MECO, main engine cutoff. So far, a clean burn from our BE-3 engine. There it is, main engine cutoff. All right, appears we have lost the link to the J layer. So far, though, everything appears to be nominal. So far, what we have seen, a clean liftoff. We did have max Q, maximum dynamic pressure.
Mm-hmm.
That is essentially for the rocket the hardest point in the flight. And then we had main engine cutoff. And now, as you can see, separation. Here we've got our infrared camera, especially on the left side. As you've seen earlier in the show, it is a little hazy down there in Texas, so we are going to rely on multiple cameras here as the vehicle continues its ascent towards space. We have passed over just about here the Kármán line. There it is, 100 kilometers, or about 328,000 feet. If you were inside there, Patrick, you will have become an astronaut. And we're just waiting for the two craft to hit their apogee. You'll know they've hit apogee when the speed hits 0 in the bottom left corner of your screen. There it is, apogee just at about 346,000 feet. Of course, we're going to have official stats for you after the flight via Twitter, but so far so good, Patrick. Looks to be a nominal flight of New Shepard. You see the booster on the right and the capsule on the left. This is when they've begun their descent. As we've seen in the past, obviously the booster is going to beat the capsule down to Earth as it's more better aerodynamically shaped.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you again, everybody, for joining us live for New Shepard's 15th flight to space. We are 5 minutes into what appears to be so far a nominal flight for New Shepard. We, of course, preceded the launch by what appears to be a perfectly executed astronaut experience rehearsal. While there are no astronauts on board today, that was a critical step towards our march towards first human flight. All right, we've picked up our long-range cameras again. There you see the booster, the bottom of the screen, and the capsule on the top. At this point, the booster is re-entering the atmosphere. It means it's going to have air pressure against which those aerodynamic surfaces Patrick and I were walking you through can push against to guide the rocket back to its landing pad. And to think this rocket will have peaked at almost Mach 4, and by the time it touches down, it's just going to touch down at about 8 kilometers per hour or 5 miles per hour. So relatively speaking, a nice soft landing. Critical, as we talked about reusability, the softer the landing, the quicker you can turn it around, right? You're not jostling the rocket, you're not jostling the hardware. You want to be able to flip it around nice and quickly. So there you see the aft fins. We also call them the pie fins because they're shaped like pie wedges. All right, there go the drag brakes. And there you see all the speed bleeding off of the vehicle and waiting for our BE-3 engine to relight. There it goes. Landing gear deployed. Oh, look at that smooth landing. And touchdown. Welcome back, New Shepard.
Oh my God, what a beautiful landing,
I think that was one of the smoothest landings I've seen of this rocket. It almost looks unreal.
Right?
It looks like CGI. I know some of you on the internet seem to think that. Believe me, that is a reusable rocket that takes off and lands. What a beautiful landing.
It looks like it's ready to go again.
Yeah, just, you know, put in those drag brakes, put in the wedge fins, fuel her up, let's go again. But until then, the show is not over. We do have the crew capsule here. On board, we have Mannequin Skywalker, as well as a couple of payload lockers filled with postcards from Club for the Future, from students from around the world. We are waiting to see the drogue chutes come out. They will be followed by the main parachutes. And a little wink from one of those big, beautiful windows. Look at that. There go the drogues. And here come the mains. All 3 parachutes are out. We're looking for full inflation, and there they go. I love that. So far, so good. A nominal launch, nominal landing for the booster. We're waiting for the crew capsule to come into land. We're at about 1,600 feet to go. And a nice smooth descent at about 16 or so miles per hour. Just at about 25 or so kilometers per hour. That is a nice smooth descent. There's the valley of our West Texas launch Site 1 as we call it. What a day so far, Patrick, let me tell you. Now, at 800 feet to go here, we should remind everybody that we do have the retrothrust system that kicks on just in the last moment. Basically, it just creates a nice air cushion for the capsule so that next time, hopefully, you know, when you and I are up in that capsule one day, we are going to be getting a nice air cushion underneath the capsule. And touchdown.
Oh, it was beautiful.
Absolutely spectacular. Patrick, I told you it was going to be worth the wait. Look at that. Definitely.
I love you. You can just see it just as it lands. You see that puff of air and it kicks up all that dust, but it's just such a gentle landing right there.
A beautiful launch and landing for both the crew capsule and the booster. Team Blue, congratulations to all of you. What a day. You should be so proud. And again, Patrick, soon, you know, if you're an astronaut on board, that is going to be a ride of a lifetime. Cannot wait to check out those onboard cameras to see the views that Mannequin Skywalker had today.
And he gets to have all the fun, gets to go everywhere.
I know, that guy. Jeez.
Now, to bring it all right back around, right, we started the day, you know, as exciting as this launch is, we actually started with, you know, the astronaut rehearsal, sort of on top of the normal launch preparation. And now we're going to bring it all back. Those same stand-in astronauts are going to go back out to the capsule. Once we open the hatch, they're actually going to get in, and we're going to practice and rehearse, essentially getting the astronauts out safely, getting them back into the van, have them reunite with their loved ones, and that's when they would go off and celebrate this sort of incredible experience they would have just had. So, you know, I can tell you that when we've done this in rehearsals and the people have just been sitting out there when this has just happened, you know, they just get emotional. Even just sitting in at the very end, they get emotional. I can only imagine what it'd be like to actually fly and get landed.
We see it time and time again. You saw a little bit. Obviously, we didn't have the audio for the safety shelter earlier today, but you know, seeing the reactions of our stand-in astronauts from having done the rehearsal, they get super, you know, psyched and worked up, as they should, right? And then same thing, as you just mentioned, when they come out of the capsule, it is, you know, we put them in, but then they come out again, and it's just this elation. And to think, you know, next time, you know, it's coming up soon, when we start, you know, putting people in that capsule, you compound it with a launch to space and back. Ugh. With a boat full of adrenaline, you better believe they are going to be absolutely psyched and ready to celebrate.
Absolutely.
Well, so the recovery process is underway. It goes like this. So Since the capsule has landed, we do have the recovery team, which includes a couple of lead vehicles, safety vehicles, and of course our crew member 7. They are quickly traveling out to the landing site. Now, this team's job, if there are astronauts on board, is to ensure that the astronauts safely exit the capsule. The astronaut families, as Patrick mentioned, in parallel are on their way, would be on their way to come welcome our astronauts. Now, once the astronauts would step out of the capsule, newly minted an astronaut, as we mentioned, it is time to celebrate. Now, simultaneously, we also have another team that is heading out to the booster to safe the vehicle and get it back to the barn. I mean, we joked about the quick turnaround. Obviously, we're not flying again today, but it's the keeping the costs of spaceflight down. You have to work on the operations, get those tight, get them quick to be able to reuse the vehicle as much and as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. That asset turnaround is absolutely key there. And again, the point of today's flight was to mimic the astronaut experience profile under real launch conditions, right? Astronaut loading is complex, launch is complex, doing them both together is super complex, and doing them well, and you saw that happen today, is going to be a huge step forward.
Patrick, what a great day. Actually, while we've got a moment, why don't we check out some of the highlights from today's launch and landing. So we had New Shepard on the pad there, a nice ignition. And a clean liftoff. Look her go. That rumble, you can see it in the cameras, and when you're down there in Texas, the whole valley feels like it's shaking when that 110,000 pounds of thrust is lit underneath the engine. And this angle. Patrick, this is one of my favorite angles. It's very reminiscent of, you know, the Saturn V taking off from the pad during the Apollo days.
Absolutely. Super, super reminiscent, super vintage look. Now, this angle right here is one you would not have seen back in the Apollo days. But this is the kind of the cool thing about having these drones up there. So you can get these beautiful shots of the rocket just going by as it's flying up.
So close you can touch it, right?
I know.
All right, here comes the booster back for its soft landing. Again, Patrick, I think this is one of the smoothest, most controlled landings I've seen from this rocket.
It makes it look easy.
It's like it's just dangling from a string.
And that's one of the benefits of having such controllability in the engine, is you can really sort of dial that thrust in and ease your way down onto the launch pad.
Exactly, exactly. And talking about we were talking earlier about the lessons that we're taking from New Shepard and pulling into New Glenn, that throttleability on the engines is critical. And then last but not least, of course, our capsule with a nice air-cushioned landing. And you can see, actually, the parachute's dropping pretty close to the capsule, meaning there's not too much wind there out on the ground today, which is beautiful. And now live shots from the recovery team that are out there. You can also see, again, we're in preparation of bringing the stand-in astronauts back. We're going to get them into the capsule so that we can practice the egress and taking out of the astronauts from the capsule. Again, coming to you soon. This has been such a critical step, this astronaut experience rehearsal in the march towards human spaceflight. Let's just take a look here. Setting up the stairs. It's a couple feet off. It's about a meter from the ground up to the hatch itself. So making sure they've got a nice, comfortable step out.
Yeah.
Onto the desert floor.
I'm sure my heart would have been beating so heavily through this. I might be a little wobbly on my feet coming out of this thing, just having been literally up in space like just a few minutes ago.
Just incredible feeling, I can imagine. Cannot wait. 7, Kevin Sprague there in the blue coveralls. He's done an incredible job, as well as Sarah Knights, our crew member 7. All right, some mission recap statistics here. These are unofficial. We will have the official ones after the flight. Maximum ascent velocity 3,600. Maximum ascent velocity 3,615 kilometers per hour. Crew capsule apogee, its highest point in flight, 106,021 meters. Mission start time, 11:51 a.m. Central Daylight Time, and mission elapsed time, 10 minutes and 27 seconds. Just an incredible day.
Very cool, very cool. And to commemorate today's launch, you can definitely pick up some of our official NS-15 mission patches and other really cool swag from our shop, and you can go to shop.blueorigin.com to do that. There's a lot of cool things out there. I saw the mission patch earlier. It has the silhouette of the 4 stand-ins there. It's extremely cool. Yeah, there we go. I think Gary is the one on the left there.
Yeah,
maybe?
exactly.
I'm not sure.
Exactly.
But it's a cool one. I'm definitely picking up one of those right after this.
Fantastic. So with that, Patrick, it is time to close out the show. Thank you so much for being my co-host.
Always my pleasure. Thank you
for having me. A wonderful launch. As I told you, worth the wait for all of you as well. Thank you for staying with us for the whole flight, New Shepard's 15th flight to space and back. Please follow us on Twitter and Instagram for all the latest updates. And please continue to stay safe out there. Until our next launch, as always, Gradatum Ferociter.